Well, South Africa's Finance Minister Godongwana yesterday delivered a budget speech that forecast stronger GDP growth, reduced deficit, and the extension of some relief funds for South Africans. Reading the tea leaves of that budget for us now is Hart. He's the executive chairman at Impact Investment Africa in Johannesburg. Great having you on our Rice Exchange tonight. Chris, I'm sure you're trying to get electricity. Eskom has been doing about 7,000 cutbacks, trying to prevent a total collapse. So we understand that Eskom featured very prominently yesterday's in Finance Minister's Honorable Godongwana's budget. But what's in that budget for you, by the way? Tell me.
Yeah, look, I think the main thing is that the budget to me was a damage control budget. More than anything else, there's no growth. It's really, they might have spoken about growth, but there's very little in the budget that actually will, really stimulate growth. It's trying to give tax incentives so that people can actually get a private sector solution. In other words, you're almost on your own as far as the as electricity is concerned. Tonight we've got what they call stage 6 load shedding, and it may well be stage 8. In other words, that they're not publicly saying it's stage 8, but we're busy being load shed to that extent. And it's become what you call as a critical crisis. The load shedding is probably going to be with us for another 6 to 8 years. It's a long-term problem. And I think what his indication is that there's still very, very high-level corruption at Eskom that is not being resolved. And that's because I think it's the ruling party's meal ticket, as it were, and they don't want to actually really deal with it. But they're throwing money at the problem. The budget had the biggest allocation of money to the offshore parastatal, and that is a concern. If you're not, you can throw as much money as you like, but if you're not fixing the underlying criminality that's entrenched itself at the power utility, it's going to be continually problematic.
So if taken overall, Chris, do you think this budget will positively impact business and investment in South Africa moving forward 2023, 24, 25 period, which the budget and the medium-term strategy actually covers?
What it does is it will stimulate investment into alternative energy, right? But it's not going to stimulate additional growth in other sectors of the economy. So you're not going to see the budget assist with bringing unemployment down. At best, we can hold the unemployment levels at current levels, but it's not going to get better. One of the biggest concerns is that the actual debt servicing requirement is now over R1 billion a day. In other words, over 400 billion rand now. Which is a frightening statistic. It's getting to be the single biggest item in the budget to service it. And of course, the amounts that they're throwing at the parastatals without privatizing, without commercializing, without any of these factors means we're going to be going like SAA, and there was more money for SAA, but there's going to be continued money thrown at this parastatals without any solution in sight. And that, I think, is the biggest battle. I think there's a lot of welfare in the actual spending. So when you're looking at whether it's a growth budget or not, you've got to look at it, right? Are they shifting resources to investment or to consumption?
Yes.
And the welfare side means that they're shifting it to consumption, not welfare. Then there's also the budget is also shifting more resources to the state rather than resources to the private sector. Because in the private sector hands, you've got much higher multiples than you have in the government sector because it's consumption driven. Whereas in the investment driven growth, you've got many more multiples that will help to drive growth. And that's basically the conundrum, is that the government is not. It hasn't been for several years, has been on this path where it's really trying to almost It's as if they're trying to resolve their own problems as if they're separate from the country, rather than to try and resolve the country's problems, which of course the biggest emergency is unemployment, but unemployment continues to rise when we go down this policy problems that we're not resolving.
Yes. Chris, thank you so much. The budget is just on the street, so we appreciate this discussion, just raising cost, cutting on that particular budget, and we'll touch base with you in the days and weeks ahead. We just have an election here in Nigeria in the next 2 days, so politics is really high there. I'm sure you're watching that. I'm going to ask for your views in the next few days. Thank you so much, Chris Hart, Executive Management at Impact Investment Africa, and that's about it.